Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the sermon and the prayers for this week. Yes, it is a virtual background in case you're wondering why the shawl never changes, but we might at least feel like we're in shawl, even if we're not. We're going to start with the extra Tillim Psalms. It's on page 510 in the Singers, Psalm 121 for those who are unwell and for the general situation in our world today. Shalom alois esoin ayel heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri me'yim adonai ois shamayim v'oretz al yitein lamoit raglecha Al yanum shoymrecha, Hinei lo yanum v'lo yishon, Shoyme Yisroel. Adonai shoymerecha, Adonai tzilcha, Al yad yaminecha. Yoimam hashemesh lo yakeka, V'yoreyach b'aloyno. Adonai yishmorecha, mikol ra yishmor es nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitzcho v'yecha, me'ata v'yadoilom. Song of Ascent, I lift my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come? It comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot stumble. The one who guards you does not slumber. Look, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord is your guardian and your shade at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all harm. He will guard your life. He will guard your going and coming now and forevermore. We're going to say prayers for those who are unwell. I have a number of names that were given in advance. Can't see comments at the moment. I'm doing this on Zoom, but if anyone has names to add, please just say the name yourself at the appropriate point in the prayer, and I'm sure your prayers will be heard. We wish Refuah Shlema, speedy recovery to all those who are unwell. Yes, yes, I've been reading this. Hi, thank you, my special. Yes, Ben Shpench, Ben Mirimis, Chana Bas Nachama, Bis Chana Ben Blimela, Chaim Tuvit, David Ben Chayaleya, Baruch Michal Ben Rachmesh, Shmuel Reuven Ben Nachama Esther, Shmuel Yehuda Ben Kayla, Yes, Ben Tin Azariah Yonason, Shmuel Ben Leoni, Yes, Gershon Avadi Ben Chanina, Timio Ben Sori, Yes, Ephraim Ben Devura, Yes, Label Bas Rochel, Ben Rochel, Yes, Reuven Ben Sar Perol, Yes, Yaakov Tzvi Leah, Yes, Michal Ben Henya, Yes, Reuven Ben Sar, Yes, Baruch Ben Tevachaya, Yes, Apatrag Ben Sar Devura, Yes, Yitzchak Isaac Ben Yehuda Rachel, Yes, Boshim Ben Fredel, Yes, Shalom Ben Minowis, Yes, Ben Miriam, Yes, Yudah Lei Ben Malkav, Yes, Mordechai Dov Ben Cyril, Yes, Gershon Ben Chana, Yes, Yisrael Ben Shenkel Zvarav, Yes, Yehuda Ben Chana Shlomis, Yes, Ruma Bas Gila, Yes, Menachem Mendel Ben Tzipor Leah, Yes, Chaim Shnei Zalman Ben Pesha Nechama, Yes, Banya Bas Devura, Yes, Ben Yomin Zev Ben Rezel, Yes, Avram Yeshua, Rav Avram Yeshua Heschel Ben Verleah, Yes, Nasa Ben Rachel, Yes, Yaakov Ben Rim, Yes, Nasa Ben Shan, Yes, Ben Marcus, Ben Zova, Yes, Miriam Bas Netam, Yes, Chana Bas Tavur, Yes, Bas Rachel, Yes, Francis Bas Herschel, Yes, Leah Bas Kerem, Yes, Yael Bas Tavur, Yes, Toma Bas Malk, Yes, Chana Bas Tavura, Yes, Chava Leah Bas Esther, Yes, Esther, Yocheved Bas Rezel Brach, Yes, Orit Bas Aviva, Yes, Golden Rivka Bas Hinda Avoshem Nostaka Babaram, Bisrazek Heshbach Nachem, Nachim Afez, Machazek Machayosam, Bishlach Lem, Efushim Shnoim Chon, Chogem, Soshechon Surface Nefesh Zagov, Hash Tam Galais Makarim, Vanaima. Amen. We wish long life to those of the outside this week, as well as the families of Linda Frankel and Edith Huberman on their passing this week. The following people have yahrzeit. Tomorrow, Simon Garland for his mother, Helena Goldberg for her aunt, Simon Henry for his mother, and Doreen Her for her mother. On Sunday, Lionel Abrams for his mother, Michael Cassan for his father, Jill Levin for her sister, Nick Levin for his father, Adela Liffman for her mother, and Jane Morris for her mother. On Monday, Sylvia Green for her father, Myrna Kay for her mother, Rosalind Medallia for her mother, Caroline Sharman for her father, Ray Brandman for his wife, sister of Madeline Garfield and Arnold Garfield. On Tuesday, Janice Westbury for her father. On Wednesday, Carol Citron for her mother and Ann Shear for her brother. On Thursday, Lionel Abrams for his father, Ray Carver for his mother, Maureen Garth for her father, and Michael Medallia for his father. On Friday, Elaine Barnett for her father, Jane Engelsman for her father. Wish everyone long life. Chaim Aruchim. El Malarachamim, Sheikhein Bamarainim. Amitay Merachanachan Tanim Ashkina. Malos Kadeshim Term, because there came out Serim as Nishamois, Mark Basaf from Simchvis, Elio Ben Binyamin, Esle Mark Bashaga 5 of Yeshua Ben Menachem Alevi, Es Eto Bastovid, yes, Esther Bas Bendil, yes, Sarah, yes, Kelly Rivka Bas Moshe, yes, Avram Tzviva Moshe Wolf, yes, Nechama Rivka Bas David, yes, Zayd Ben Yaakov Ariel, yes, Shane Bas Yisrael, yes, Masha Bas Chaim Mordechai, yes, Avram Yaakov Ben Shalom HaKohen, yes, Shmuel Ben Yovis, Yaakov Ben Yosef, Shalchu Lo'ilamam, Ana Balachamim, yes, Reim B'Sei, Second Vav Lo'ilamim, Yitzol B'Tochamis Nishmas, Am Adino Nachal Asam, and Yorchem Shlom Mishkavay Sam, V'Naimar, Amen. Sure, we all know the story about the Chazan who sung a very long and detailed Kol Nidre back in the days when you could do long services. And afterwards, one fellow comes up to him and says, you know, Chazan, Reverend, that was the worst rendition I've ever heard in my life. You should be ashamed. And the rabbi comes up to the Chazan, puts his hand on his shoulder and says, don't worry about it. He doesn't know what's going on. He just repeats what he hears everyone else saying. Singing, of course, is so central to Judaism. One of the challenges now is not having communal singing even when our shuls are open. It's so central. And of course, it goes back to ancient times. We read in this week's Sedra of Beshallach about the Shira. It's called Shabbat Shira, the Sabbath of song. And we read the song that was recited by the children of Israel. And it says, that day God saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. They saw the great power that God displayed against the Egyptians. They were in awe of him. They believed in him and his servant Moshe and Moses. And the Israelites sang this song. And then you have Oz Yashem Moshe Uvanei Yisrael, etc. The song at the sea. A great point, a high point in history. Our rabbis tell us that even the humblest of Jews at that moment saw what the greatest of prophets didn't even see. And they broke into song, a song that we say every morning during our morning prayers. I'm all for English. It's important for those who don't have access to Hebrew to pray in English, to study in English, 100% kosher. God understands English, American English, Australian English, British English. But there's always a problem when you translate things. You lose a lot of the nuance. And so the original text, the Torah says, Oz Yashim Moshe Bnei Yisrael. And it's translated as Moshe and the children of Israel sung this song, but it's not really. What it should say, and some translations do, is Moshe and the children of Israel will sing this song. I will sing to God, future tense. And that's often missed in a translation. Why, when the Torah is speaking of a story that happened in the past, does it suddenly lapse into the future tense? That Moshe will sing in the future. It's not an accident. So Rashi offers, as usual, very clever insight. Rashi tells us that it's a fundamental principle of Judaism that we believe in Tchiyat HaMeitim, the resurrection of the dead, in the times of the Mashiach. That the soul continues to live. It doesn't end with death, and eventually will return to a body. And that's why the Torah uses the future tense. Not only did Moshe sing in the past, but even though he's not with us now, there will come a time of resurrection when Moshe will sing in the future. Okay, it's a nice idea, makes sense. But why of all times here to suddenly start talking about resurrection of the dead, even if it is a fundamental belief? It seems rather random. And why tell us not just that Moshe sings in the future, but the children of Israel as well? There must be something more to it. There is a story that occurred on this Shabbos 77 years ago. Rabbi Aaron Rokeach, who lived from 1880 to 1957, was the fourth Rebbe of the dynasty of Belz, which is a city, of course, in Poland. He led the movement from 1926 until he died in 1957. Rebbe Aaron of Belz was known by Jews and Gentiles alike for the miracles he performed. He didn't eat or sleep very much. He was made of spiritual stuff. His reign saw the devastation of his community, along with most of European Jewry, which of course we commemorated this week with Holocaust Memorial Day. During the war, he was high on the list of targets as a high-profile rabbi. And indeed, the Nazis murdered his wife and each of his children and grandchildren. He was left with no one. With support and assistance from others, and including his own Hasidim in Israel, England, and America, he and his half-brother, Reb Mordechai, managed to escape from Poland to Hungary, to Turkey, to Lebanon, and finally to Israel in February 1944. He remarried, but he had no children. At that time, people thought that Belz was an item of history, and yet the impossible occurred. His half-brother, Reb Mordechai, married and had a son, and then Reb Mordechai died suddenly a few months later. Reb Aaron raised his half-brother's year-old son, his nephew Yisachadov, and he groomed him to succeed him as the Belzer Rebbe. And today it's one of the biggest groups in Israel, numbering more than 50,000 with schools, synagogues, and yeshivas. The Belzer Rebbe was not able to say Kaddish or Yiskaf, his wife and children. But how did he respond to the destruction of his family and the near destruction of his community? How did he honor the memory of the dead? By building new institutions, by nurturing a new generation. And that's what he did for the rest of his life. He didn't settle in Jerusalem. He settled in the secular Zionist Tel Aviv. And he rebuilt Jewish life. And the first Shabbos after he arrived in Israel, winter 1944, it was Shabbos Beshallach. And he spent it in Haifa alone, without a single relative except his brother alive. That Shabbos he held a Tish, a Hasidic gathering, where Hasidim would sing and dance and share words of inspiration and Torah. He quickly realized that there were survivors of the Shoah present who had had indescribable suffering. Many had lost everything. They weren't in the mood for singing. And so he decided to speak to himself and to the few broken Hasidim who had survived along with him. He raised the question that Rashi raises. He said that, yes, the Torah, according to Rashi, when it speaks of the future tense, it alludes to the resurrection of the dead. But why? Why at the splitting of the sea? And this was the answer that the Belzer Rebbe gave. When the Jewish people sang the Shira, the song at the sea, many of them were not even present. How many didn't survive the enslavement of Egypt? How many children had already drowned in the Nile? How many never lived to see the Exodus? How many refused to embark on the journey? We know the Midrash says, according to one opinion, only 20% left Egypt. They were a broken nation, even as they saw the miracle. 80% gone. It's safe to say anyone who made it out of Egypt would have lost family members. How could they fully rejoice with the miracles? And then the sea splits, wonder of wonders. And Moshe says to them, come, let's sing. And their response, how can we sing? 80% of us are not here. And the Torah says, yes, Moshe and the children of Israel will sing in the future. Says Moshe, this story isn't finished. The Jews in Egypt have died, but their spirits are alive. They will return eventually. We can sing now, says Moshe, not because we have no pain, but despite the pain, we know it's not the end, and we can sing to celebrate the future. And this is what sets apart Jewish history. All of history is about the past. Jewish history, though, is the story of the past based on the future. For us, history is not the past, but also the future. We know redemption will come, and so we can go back and see exile as a springboard for redemption and for healing. For us, the future defines and gives meaning to the past. This is how the Belzer Rebbe inspired his students to begin singing once again as they arrived in the Holy Land 77 years ago. And they did sing. And today, if it wouldn't be for coronavirus, you could go to that shul and hear thousands of Jews singing and celebrating Jewish life. And as this week we marked Holocaust Memorial Day nationally, also it reminds us that despite the pain, we always look to the future. There will come a time in the future. Even now we have rebuilt. The community has survived, the Jewish people have survived. I once read an article by a survivor of Auschwitz. He said that every morning, as the sun would rise over Auschwitz, his heart would swell with anger. How dare you? How can the sun be so indifferent to the suffering of millions? How can it rise again to cast its glow on a world which is drenched in the blood of the purest and the holiest ones? How can it be so cruel? Where is the protest, he said. But he continued his story. He survived. I came out of the hell. And the day after liberation, I lie in bed for the first time in years, and I watch the sunrise. And for the first time, he says, I feel grateful to the sun. I feel empowered that after such a long night, which seems to never end, the light has at last arrived. This is the story of our people. It's the story of now as we live through darkness. We know that there will come a time again of light. Our sun may have set in the past, but it also rises. And with hope and with life, we will prevail. Famously, it says, Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. The eternal one of Israel doesn't lie. There will come an end. There will come a time when we will sing once again, whether it's because of coronavirus, whether it's because of the perils of our history, whether it's just because the world needs Mashiach and needs redemption. We know that in the future, we will sing once again. And that knowledge allows us even now to sing and be joyous, just as we were at the splitting of the sea. We don't give up. With all the hardships, we know that this is not the end. It's just the beginning of hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel. Shabbat Shalom. May we all stay safe and well. We honor the memory of those that we remember, not just by remembering them, but by looking to the future and making sure that our future is assured. May we all sing with joy on simchas and in good health. Shabbat Shalom.